Hi, I'm Courtney. I am with Outlander Behind the Scenes. That's the blog I write, and I also do cast and crew interviews and this discussion with my lovely ladies. And we have not seen each other in a long time, so we are really happy to be here. We are going to be discussing 412 Providence today.
I am Carmen, and I write the Outlander Anatomy blog, and I find lots of tidbits in both the TV series and the book to spur me writing about the human body and its diseases and its injuries.
Well, I'm Catherine, and I also enjoy the books and the show. I'm not a purist by any means. I'm a physician, so I enjoy the medical parts of Outlander, and I'm also a contributor to Blacklanders, and actually did this episode in the Convos.
Cool.
I'm Antoinette. I'm so happy to be back with these ladies talking about something that's near and dear to my heart, Outlander. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and I really look forward to these discussions. So let's get to it.
And we are so happy to have you back, Antoinette. We missed you so much, as did everyone. I had some people who usually go on and on are kind of like, yeah, that was a good discussion last time.
I know. They were so disappointed.
They did appreciate your impressions, Catherine. Right. You kept Antoinette very present with us. But we're glad we have the real Antoinette back.
Well,
so what are we drinking? I am drinking. I just got over the flu, and thanks to the advice of my anatomist and my doctor friend, I am hydrating with pineapple flavored hint water in a BPA free plastic bottle, which I so wish they would do these in glass. I would feel 100% great about this if it were glass. So I should send this to Hint. Yes. Please do this with glass.
Right.
Can I say an aside about that?
Yeah, please.
The woman who created Hint did so and essentially made it into $1 billion company after Coca-Cola blew her off and called someone called her sweetie when she talked to them, and she said, all right, I'll sweetie you, and she created Hint into $1 billion company.
Yes, and it is awesome. It is. Have you guys tried it?
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's zero sweetener, zero blah blah blah. It's just got a hint of pineapple in it. Mm-hmm. It just needs to be in glass. Kick-ass Hint lady, glass.
Okay. Well, I'm drinking water. My little cheap water that I bought at Target. Now that I'm a public defender, I can't afford Hint. So here's my cheap water. For some reason, you weren't there. We were just talking. And I had told the ladies that I was closing down my private practice and taking a job as a public defender because I thought I'd be more effectual in doing indigent defense work. And so I knew it would mean a huge cut in my lifestyle because obviously I'm making a lot less money than I made when I had my own firm. I want to do something that I'm passionate about, and just foregoing certain little things, to me, I'm more than compensated because I'm in the trenches doing the work that I want to do. And I think that it has helped me deal with losing Kirk, because I see so much of him in so many of the young men that I'm interacting with. So I feel that I'm sort of honoring him by doing this kind of work.
Kirk is your nephew?
Yes. Mm-hmm. That was his name.
Good for you.
Really?
Well, I acknowledge and honor your healing work and journey.
Thank you, my dear.
Yeah.
Quite impressive.
I am drinking my favorite, which is sparkling wine. It's not very imaginative, but my God, I love it.
But it's usually dry prosecco. Is that the same thing? Because I don't drink.
Well, it's an Italian sparkling wine, specifically Italian sparkling wine. This is not. It's a California, but it's good. I'm not particular.
Exactly. It's wine.
Yeah.
And Catherine?
I am in honor of Fraser's Ridge. I have Carolina Muscadine wine.
Wonderful.
With the stem this time. So if you hear me squeal, it's because I tipped it over.
What is muscadine? It sounds like it would be musky.
It's like a large grape,
Mhm.
and it's very, very sweet. It's kind of like a small plum or a large grape. It's kind of in between the two, and it makes really good wine.
And it's grown in Carolina, North Carolina.
They grow it in the Carolinas, in the southeast. It's very common, Georgia, South and North Carolina.
Isn't it too wet
sweet.
there?
It's no, there's a lot of wineries in this area. Yeah, but it's very, very sweet. So it tastes a lot like juice, really, but it's very potent because it's like 12% alcohol. So you have to be really careful.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well,
So basically one glass for me, and that's it.
yeah, you should be interesting by the end of this conversation.
Well,
I'm
12%. Are you kidding me?
on the table.
It's 12% alcohol. Yes.
It's like the Everclear of wine.
Yes, it is. That's
like malt liquor.
Okay, so overall impressions, I'll kick us off. I loved this episode very, very much, particularly the Roger segment of the story.
Okay, so I love this episode too. I hate to completely agree because it doesn't create much controversy, but I have to agree with you, Courtney. This is, if not my favorite, my second favorite, or a tie with one or two others. I just thought it was very well written. I thought it was wonderfully acted. I thought the filming was perfect. The music was wonderful. I enjoyed it all the way through. I've watched it about 7 times and I cry every single time.
My impression of this episode was the best of what Outlander is. And that it is what every episode should be and could be.
Wow.
Come on, don't hold back.
I had a lot of issues with this episode.
Because I don't like Roger.
No, I don't like Roger. But for me, it just encapsulated a lot of the issues that I've had with the season 4 imbalance. I thought it was imbalanced. I thought so. I did not love the episode. I didn't hate it, but it's not my favorite. One of my favorites.
Okay. So good to have you back.
Oh, yes, it is.
Okay, so then Carmen, you're going to kick us off with favorite scenes and what worked for you.
Barber's Adagio for Strings that played when Roger made up his mind to go back and help Father Alexander. That whole subsequent filming was just wonderful for me. It's very difficult to watch. It's deeply moving. And I think it fits with the title. What happens fits with the title of Providence. Another one of my favorite scenes was the gauntlet. Now that gauntlet, I've read a little bit about it, and it's apparently 20 meters long. And a person has to run from one end to the other. And I thought it was really interesting to look at how Roger approached this compared with how Ian approached it in the next episode. And they were totally different. Roger tried to muscle his way through it, which you can't do with that many warriors holding clubs and sticks and so forth. And Ian used his ingenuity and cleverness to get himself to the end. Now, I thought rather than pummel Roger any further with criticism, that it's important to remember that Ian had spent time with the Mohawk. And he had a little bit more understanding of their mores, I think, and their lifestyle. And I think Roger is totally, the only thing he knows is what he has seen when they were walking, for however many weeks they were walking together. And actually, it was about 100 days, because that's how many knots it turns out he had in that string.
Did you count them?
I did not count them. It's in the script.
Yeah.
Okay, phew. I was like, Carmen.
And then I wanted to say one more, because you said we're going to combine two now. So I thought the FX for the burning scene, when Father Alexander and his lover became human torches, was just fabulous. And I just have only the greatest respect for the stunt woman that, put on her outfit and greased herself up and walked into that conflagration, because I don't think I could do that. It was very impressive and very believable.
I mean, some of the scenes I felt the same way about. The adagio for strings always gets me. I play the violin, so anything with strings just always brings out a lot of emotion for me. And I felt that even though there was some criticism that it was a cheap way of creating emotion, I don't think so. I think music should be used for that purpose. So the fact that they used that it worked, and in that kind of a scene, to me, was a perfect pairing. The other scene that I really enjoyed was the scene when Lord John Grey was reading Jamie's letter, and they had the voiceover and they showed them walking through. I thought that was very poignant. It was it was the scene that should have happened when she forgave him. When Bree forgave, I felt like that was the tone that should have been throughout that whole forgiveness for Jamie. And so I thought that was, and it was just a nice combination of Lord John Grey bonding with Bree forgiving her father, his voiceover sort of giving a fatherly view of everything and giving her advice that was sound and that was loving, and it was just beautifully written. It was the sound of his voice without any acting was also beautifully done. And so I felt that was those are my favorite in that episode. What worked for me was I felt that, well, one, the Mohawk Village, just absolutely fantastically done. The people, the costumes, the scenery, everything, the children running around. I mean, it was just a family atmosphere, and that's what it should have been. And I thought that it was very well done. I just felt like every scene made sense. Some of the acting was a little questionable, but for the most part, it was well done. And I just thought the episode just worked for me in general. I just thought that it made sense.
My favorite scene, and it's not a scene, it's the sequence, is the same. It's that ending sequence. To me, it's just brilliant. It is it was so artistically done. It was so emotionally evocative between the music and the performances. That just blew me away. I thought the scene between Father Alexander
French
and Roger, where he's talking about, don't be an idiot. I loved that scene because they were both so strong, I felt, and it was believable to me. Roger seemed like a modern day guy. He stuck with that. And then the priest seemed like a 1700s guy, but yet they were communicating. Sometimes those scenes can be kind of clunky, but I felt like that really worked, and Roger was just himself, and I don't know. I loved that scene. I thought it was very strong. The costumes, the detail and the costumes for the Mohawk Village was just astounding. When you look at all of the headdresses and the jewelry and the, what they're wearing, amazing. And then the sets also really worked. The adagio for strings, that worked for me. The whole part of Roger's story really worked for me.
Oh, okay. I guess, I mean, I don't want to come across as a contrarian. Well, I am a contrarian, but man, it's so fascinating to me that all of us could watch this episode and come away with, well, my view is completely disparate from you guys, because I did not like this episode. Not necessarily because it wasn't well acted, it wasn't well performed, the sets, nothing about the production side of it. But I just felt that it was imbalanced, and because there's too much time was spent, I think, on Roger's sojourn and that whole arc of that story. And too little time was spent with the people in Wilmington and that whole thing with Bonnet and, Fergus and Marcelly. And I just thought that they could have spent a little bit more time on those scenes. I thought, because my favorite scenes were the scenes with Fergus and Marcelly. I loved the two of them together. They were so cute. Lauren Lyle is such a little pocket dynamo. I just love her. She takes over when she's on the screen, and I just love her. And I wished we could have seen a little bit more of that. I liked the interaction with Bree and Lord John, because I feel that there's an ease and a naturalness when they act together. I think Sophie has actually more chemistry with Lord John than she has with Roger. No, I'm serious. There's a naturalness there that is missing from the Roger breed. And no matter how much they try to talk up this great love story, it's a no from me. What worked for me, I mean, the Mohawk Village was just fantastic. I'm speechless with how much I loved everything about the Mohawk Village, except the amount of time we spent there. Well, I love the costumes, I love the sets, I love the acting, I love everything about that. But we just spent too much time there, and I just kept wanting them to just get on with it.
I felt, it's funny to me, Antoinette, that you say that, because what I felt the imbalance was in the quality of acting between the Roger part. I thought the acting was phenomenal, and I felt like Sophie struggled in this episode. So it was kind of like you come over here and you see the cinematic, amazing genius, and then there's these scenes over here. Excepting Lauren Lyle. I totally agree with you over there on that. And Duncan Lacroix, so strong. David Barry and Bree, I think it's your fault, Carmen, because she's not moving her mouth, and that's the only thing I could see. And then I felt like Lord John Grey it was almost like he started not moving his mouth. Did you guys notice that when he says, "I'm acquainted with your parents"? I'm like, Dracula? Anyway, so that was the imbalance for me. It was like these heavyweights and then lightweights.
Yeah, I felt the lightest weight was Bonnet. Bonnet. There you go.
Hey, I don't cook, but I remember names.
Oh yeah, I can cook, but I don't remember names. But Bonnet, I thought about you, Carmen, when you I always think of it as Sam's acting eyelids, but the way he can change his face, his eyelids, to change emotion on his face. And one of the things that I felt about this episode was that the scene between Bonnet and Bree was a perfect opportunity for him to do that, and he was simply unable. The facial expression, you couldn't figure out what it was. There were a couple of moments where it's like, okay, it seems like she was getting through to him, but for the most part, subtlety, which isn't his strong suit in this character, would have been best. And I just kept going back to Sam's facial acting and how that would have been just perfect in that situation, and it just simply wasn't there.
I thought she was really strong in that scene.
Exactly.
Yes, I agree. And her hand shaking in that scene was very realistic. I noticed that when she was reaching for the jewel, her hand was shaking, and I thought, okay, those are little details that are very effective.
I thought that was her best scene, was with him.
I thought Sophie's scene in the jail with was
Bennett.
one of her Bonnet, whatever, was one of her strongest, was one of her more strong performances, because she does tend to have a flat affect when she's just relating normal things. I don't know if it's because this is the struggle to maintain the accent that sort of keeps her so caged, but you can see that she is trying so hard, and she comes across as flat in a lot of just normal interactions. But when she has to do the big emotions, I think she releases herself more, and she becomes much more effective. So I really felt her in that scene. I thought she was very, very good. I agree with you, Catherine, in that I think the guy who plays Bonnie, I think he sort of varies between caricature and underplaying it. I don't think he has struck the balance yet. In some scenes, yes, he has, where you say that evil there. I think in the very first episode, he really found that balance. In that first episode, when we first saw him, he was really creepily evil. Reminded me of Robert De Niro in Cape Fear. That is the vibe that he was giving me in that first scene. But I think since then, he has not found that balance again. But I thought that Sophie carried that scene very well.
Yeah, I agree with you about that, about his portrayal. I thought it was great in 401, the first one. And then it kind of, when it was on the ship, he was too like Jack Sparrow kind of ish. Yeah.
Maybe ships do that to people. When my husband and I watched this episode, he liked Bonnet's performance in the jail from a man's point of view. He thought it was believable. I thought Sophie did a pretty good job. The part that bothered me a lot was when she said, I can't get up off this couch. I've been pregnant 4 times and given birth 4 times. And believe me, I was moving around all that time. It was just unrealistic to me and overacted. The other time that bothered me a lot is when she disembarked the carriage with Lord John in Wilmington. And, all of that scene there, which was rather lengthy, she's got her jaw just like this again. Only her tongue is moving, basically. She's got her chin up in the ear like this. And
Carmen, you should be a ventriloquist.
Wow. I know. That's what I was thinking.
Maybe it is because she's trying to reach for the American accent, as some people have suggested. I don't know what the thing is, what the deal is, but it's very distracting to me because it makes the sound of her voice come out of her nose too much. And it flattens it, and it doesn't resonate well. And I just think that she could use some help there.
Yeah.
She's beautiful, though. Her cheekbones are amazing. I was looking at her face thinking, wow, what a portrait that would make.
Yeah, she's
beautiful. For painting. The other with Bennett, though, he just seems like he's just too much Pirate of the Caribbean. I mean, Bonnet, sorry. bonnet. Too much Pirates of the Caribbean and not enough 50 Shades of Grey.
Mm, I like that. He should be more. He should be more fitty and less piratey. I think he's a very good actor. So hopefully, when if we see him again in season 5, which I'm sure we will, and let's hope that he finds the balance. Carmen, I wanted to pick up on something you said. Or was it you or Courtney said about your imbalance was with the it was Courtney, sorry, with the acting between Roger and Father Alexandra and the rest of the ensemble in the Wilmington. My feeling on that is that I don't know if the purpose of exploring that dynamic in such great detail and spending so much time on it was to sort of redeem the Roger character and give us a reason to root for him and get behind him. Because I think the writers have done a disservice by the Roger character in how he has been portrayed in season 4. And I think that perhaps that they spend so much time on that in an effort to redeem the character. But Richard did a very, very good job in the scenes. His acting was really, really good. But this whole look out for number one and I fell in love with a woman and I was an idiot, that further alienated the character from me. Because I said, I wanted to say, bitch, please.
I think the point was to show that he's grown a pair.
You should have gone after her. You should never have let her leave. And then so to blame her and you're loving her for the predicament that you find yourself in, instead of owning up to it and saying, so that part didn't work for me. I don't see why it was necessary to go that deep into it in terms of the overall story and the fact that you only have the 13 episodes. And let me finish by saying this. I thought some of that should have been explored, but not to the depth that it was. And I also thought it seemed to me that they felt that they had gone to so much trouble to build this beautiful Mohawk village and bring over all these these actors from Canada, that they felt that they just had to use them. And they were there, and we spent 3/4 of the episode there because they had brought over all these indigenous actors and created this beautiful, magnificent village. And so, like it or not, we were going to be in the Mohawk village for however long it took for us to get just how wonderful it was.
I thought maybe the writer had in mind with this business of the monologue where Roger says, I'm looking after number one, I'm number one from here on out, sort of swaggering talk. To juxtapose that against his decision to turn back, and that was part of the redemption story in this particular episode. But I think it was overdone. I agree with you, Antoinette. I just think that Roger had a little bit too much to say that seemed to come out of the blue. I mean, I know he's been hurt and he's struggling and so forth. But I did think Father Alexandre, or good father.
Yeah, let's call him that. I don't know why that's so hard for me. A good father.
I thought he
the
was
priest.
just as I had imagined him. Absolutely to the... I can't even think of a single thing about him that wasn't how he came across in the book to me. And I enjoyed that very much for them to be able to exchange with each other. I did think that, like I said, I did think the Roger part of explaining, how bitter he was and, trying to talk about his situation was a little overdone.
Well, I have some thoughts on that. You guys know whose name is on this episode?
Who is it? Is it our 307 lady?
Yes, Karen Campbell. And there is no way in hell that she wrote this episode, in my opinion. It's, I mean, if you compare 307 and then her other one, which was 402,
402.
I think, and then this one, this was like a master class. The level of writing to me was better than any of the other episodes. I think it even surpasses Matt and Tony.
I do.
I honestly think Ron wrote this episode because Ron loves these underdog characters like Frank. He loves to write Frank, and Frank's now gone. And I would think he would love to write Roger because Roger is like Job, you know, his character, everything happens to him. I don't know if it's because these characters are complex for him. He identifies more with them. But I thought that they did that scene with the priest and made it so kind of went into it to foreshadow this whole thing impressed upon him so that you could later believe the role that Roger played in the 18th century, which is a spoiler.
Of course. I can see, you see, Courtney, my issue with the episode, everything that happened at the Mohawk Village was good TV, bordering on great TV. No question, hands down. But I don't watch Outlander merely to watch good TV, great TV. I watch Outlander because I became invested in a particular story, you know, and that is what I tune into Outlander for. And so for me, all the episodes have to be bringing me to that story that I'm invested in, which is the core relationship, which is the Jamie and Claire relationship, and how everything branches out from that. So when I have an episode where 3/4 of it is devoted to Roger's angst and his redemption, as brilliantly acted as it was, and as beautifully presented as it was, it leaves me wanting more. It leaves me wanting to say, what the hellacious hell is going on? Why are we sacrificing this story to indulge ourselves in this, telling this part of it? It came across as indulgence on the part of the creative people in the show. So that is my frustration. Not that what they produce isn't good, because it is. But my frustration is it's stealing episodes and time that could be devoted to building up the main story and delivering that to us. Last point I will make. When in season 1, the Wentworth prison thing that Jamie went through, do you realize that we never actually saw him go through that? We only saw it in Ransom a Man So by way of flashbacks when he was telling it to Claire, right? That was extremely powerful. And we got to see what he went through, but we didn't linger there. This would have been a perfect time for them to do something like that. Film those episodes, edit them, and then when Bri and Roger are reunited, as part of their reconnecting, he could be telling her how he came, you know, to this catharsis and this light bulb moment. And we could have a few flashbacks so that we get all of that. Do you see what I mean? But the whole meandering through it just came across as indulgence on the part of the creators. They liked it, they went with it, and I don't think it served the story.
That is a hope I have for season 5, that because that is one of the problems with the second half of season 3 and season 4, in my opinion, that the writing, the episodes seem so individual. They don't flow. There's no outline. It's just like here's mine, here's mine. We didn't really talk about it or read each other's, and don't do that. You know, I think that's probably why Sam and Katrina are like, we need to be involved here, because I mean, these writers come in, they're new, and these guys have been these characters for years now. I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like to read some of these scripts and be like, are you kidding me?
But I would like to switch gears and comment on a big theme that I got out of this episode. I saw this episode as a morality play. And what I saw in it was the juxtaposition between two men facing death. One with no moral compass, that would be Stephen Bonnet. And these are secondary characters, by the way. And the other one with a moral compass that is so narrow, he is unable to do anything to help himself, his wife, or pardon me, not his wife, but his lover and the child that she bore from their union. And I thought that was quite compelling, actually, because life isn't tidy. It doesn't go into nice little cubicles like we would like to think it does. It's messy. And I thought that this was a really interesting, that was very interesting about these two men. They're both facing death, but my goodness, what a different take on life they each had, what a different approach they each had. I felt perhaps most compassion for the priest, that he was not able to help and choose to have his life ended in such a horrific fashion. And then Bonnet, who will do anything in order to save his, it doesn't matter what. And I just think that's a really interesting dichotomy there of good and evil that we see all the time in life. Shades of it in, 50 shades or more of it. But I just thought that was very interesting and easy to miss in this episode because there's so much going on. But when you think about that, that's really a yin and yang story there that is housed underneath this one episode. And that may, in fact, I have decided, support your claim, Courtney, that Ron was a big, if he wasn't the writer, he was a big influence in the outcome of this episode.
Well, the layers, there's just so much to this episode that it felt like it was written by a master, which I don't find Karen Campbell to be.
No.
He's a wonderful writer. Ron is a wonderful writer.
I think he's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think that some of the issues with the priest also, at first it was a bit annoying. It's like, why won't you just help yourself? But it seemed that his penance was to be burned alive. I mean, I guess it seemed as if he had broken his vow and felt he needed to be punished. And what better way to be punished than by fire?
Yeah.
Given Catholicism and everything else, and just within the Bible in terms of, purification by fire and all the rest, it just seemed like it fit in that regard. And I thought that the scene was done so beautifully and so realistically.
Carmen, I love your big theme. That did not occur to me. And it's completely there when you point it out. It's fascinating. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you guys have big themes, ladies?
My big theme seemed to be, again, like what we talked about. It was like redemption. It was just Roger going from describing what he said was selfish, but then doing something that was completely unselfish. And Father Alexandra, to me, actually, he was probably the most selfish, I think, of all of the redemption stories. I think that he was so fixated on his beliefs that he just didn't care about anything else. But I think that showing a little bit of softness, I think it had been better acted. It might have been more obvious. But the softness of Stephen Bonnet giving the jewel to Bree, Lord John Grey even redeeming himself by not turning Murtaugh in. There was just a lot of instances where characters redeemed themselves. Even Jamie with his letter. And what I thought was very interesting about this, with it all being everyone being so much about Claire and the strong woman, she was non-existent in this whole episode.
Yay, finally.
And I think that might be why I enjoyed it so much.
It's shoved down our throat, every episode.
Yeah, I feel like they do, they kind of do caricatures of men and women in this, kind of like, you're a strong woman, so you're going to slap people and you're a man, so of course you're going to think about yourself. I don't know. Yeah. It's just like,
I think Marcelly is the strongest woman in Outlander in this season.
Yeah, Jenny and Marcelly.
Yeah.
Because they don't act like idiots.
Yeah. Although Jenny acted a bit like an idiot with her whole a little bit. I mean, I think that she stuck her nose in places where she shouldn't have. But I think Marcelly in general, I think that she's the most mature in her attitude, in her acting, in her the way she analyzes situations. She just seems like, she's just a ride or die. I mean, if you want somebody by your side, it's her. I would much rather have her next to me in a fight than Claire.
Because I was so annoyed with the episode. I didn't really have a big theme per se. I saw where they were going in terms of the redemption of the Roger character. I saw where they were going with that, with him making the speech and then turning back and everything. I thought that was a little obvious, but I know what I like to see in terms of how things happen and how things evolve. And I prefer when things have an organic flow, when they don't seem so contrived and so obvious. Do you know what I mean? Because it was obvious that he was going to run back. With all that speech before and him leaving and hearing the scream, of course he was going to turn back. There was no will he, won't he? We knew he would. So, so maybe if that had been a little bit more subtle, maybe we would have been on more the edge of our seats wondering, what would Roger do? We all knew what he was going to do, So the whole redemptive aspect of it, as Carmen brought out, I can see that, and the juxtaposition between the two men and how they're approaching their imminent death. You see, there's so much in the books. There are so many interwoven themes. It's so very rich. So it always interests me to see which parts of it they choose to put in the show and what aspects of all the interwoven themes they choose to highlight. Some of the choices that they have made, I have been completely against it. Some of the things that they have done, bravo, because they picked on the parts that showed exactly where the story is going, and they chose the storylines that delivered that to us. Example, the birds and the bees. Perfect in every way in terms of bringing the essential core of the story to the fore and giving us that. So I didn't come away with a big theme. My big theme, if anything, would have gone back to what I said: imbalance. Too much time spent on exploring one thing and too little time developing the other thing. So imbalance in terms of how it was presented to us, and maybe imbalance in terms of how Roger's journey has been presented to us through the entire season 4.
Can I just say one thing about the redemption also that was more subtly done, but very well done, was the character, and I'm going to mangle his name, Caheleton. His redemption, the fact that he was essentially Roger's captor, but it was very clear why. it was that he felt that Roger wasn't honorable, and he was trying to question, just trying to figure out, why were you sold to us by your own people? Why he was, and it became very obvious when he was trying to protect, um, oh,
The girl.
yeah, the girl, yes. When he was trying to protect her, it was clear it wasn't that he just was inherently bad. He just thought that Roger didn't deserve his respect. And because he was sold, because he was asking him, do you not have any honor? Then if it was about a woman, why were you talking to her? And then in the end, when he, was holding the child, and that gets me every time. That was probably the best few minutes of acting in the whole episode. The sadness and the pain and the anguish. I cry every time I see it.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was.
And it wasn't the music; it was his acting.
No, he's phenomenal.
Great. He is fantastic.
And he's very beautiful too.
And he's very beautiful. Yes.
Yeah. No, that whole scene was breathtaking. Really, really breathtaking. He and the whole thing with her walking into the fire, him, the baby, it was just wonderful.
Yeah.
But Karen, can you answer a question for me? It's been a while since I read that book. I don't remember anything like that happening in the book in terms of that did not happen in the book.
That was the writer's
invent. I didn't think so. But
what? Which part?
The part how he died. Roger.
How he died.
Roger, Claire, she handed the baby to Claire and then walked into the fire.
She walked into the fire.
So in the book, they burned him. They didn't keep him there with his feet on the fire. And speaking of which, while I had the flu, Antoinette said, watch The Last of the Mohicans. This is a completely copycat of that.
Major. What was his name? Major.
However, traditionally, you have to consider that there's some cultural similarities as well. So, I mean,
no. Here's how. They had the gauntlet, which is a cultural similarity. They had lacrosse, cultural similarity. They had the guy, which Carmen brought this up, and this is not in this episode, but when Jamie tells young Ian, tell them to take me, and young Ian says, take me. That's in The Last of the Mohicans. And then the same thing with the fire. The guy, Daniel Day-Lewis, shoots him
so that he would die quicker.
Yeah, he's over the fire like this guy. And Daniel Day-Lewis shoots him from far away so he would kill him.
And that's right mercy.
Yeah. So a lot of Last of the Mohicans.
You said that's my issue, Courtney. I don't understand why there is seems to me in some of the episodes, such a determination not to use what is in the source and adapt it, instead of just creating something completely different for no earthly reason, it seems to me.
Maybe they do it because it's too boring for them to just do what the book is. I don't know.
I have heard several explanations, and one of them went from Ron and from Ira early on, and I've heard it repeated, was we have to write something different for the people who haven't read the books, which is nonsense because they wouldn't know whether it was different or not. Only
exactly
read the books would know it, but I've heard that repeated over and over in some of the podcasts. Lately, I've heard one that actually did make sense. Just recent footage, Matt says we do these other, what did they call it? Other Outlander stories or side stories or something like that. There was a term that they used, and they do it because they have to provide some things for these other actors to do. They're on contract with them, Roger and so forth. And so they create these little stories to give them a little bit more presence in the episodes. The problem is, and I totally agree because it was said earlier, is that they are sacrificing the core of this story is Jamie and Claire. And they over and over they keep sacrificing their story so that they can do these little side stories. And some of them are quite good. They're compelling and interesting. But I don't want to see that happen at the sacrifice of these two people who are the reason why we fans follow the books and the series so faithfully.
Mm-hmm. Something that I've also noticed just since Droughtlander has begun, I started going back and watching some of the earlier episodes. And I know that there's been some criticism about Sophie and her acting. It's grown significantly since she started. But when you go back and watch episode 1 and 2, and you see Katrina's acting.
You mean
it's not
2?
Seasons 1 and 2, the episode 1 and 2 of season 1.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see the difference between her acting, her speech, and everything then to now, how much she's grown. Yes. She was almost at the same place where Sophie is now.
I thought Katrina started out stronger than Sophie, but when I saw episode 201, I was like, boom. I thought, what did Katrina do over the break? Go to somehow she
acting school.
No, I don't
kidding.
know. Maybe she studied her own work and said, what can I do? Or I don't know. She just
inhabiting the character more.
Yeah,
perhaps. But I felt that the if you watch her now and go back to watching 1 and 2, episodes 1 and 2, the contrast is pretty significant. And so I'm hoping that even in the actors that seem a little green right now, that over time that they'll become the same. They'll become more polished. When you have someone like Lauren Lyles coming in, who just seems like she's such a powerhouse right from the beginning, I'm really hoping that when they move to the Ridge, that they include her more.
Yeah.
She wasn't in the books a lot, but I'm hoping that they'll expand her story a little bit, just because she's just phenomenal.
Carmen, going back to something you said about that they have to give these other actors something to do. Can I just say politely, bullshit?
Not saying that not to you. That understand. I'm just saying that's what I've heard.
No, not to you. To that point, because in the books, these side characters have a lot of stuff that's going on with them, so they don't need to create stuff for them. My difficulty is that you can see that when Outlander first started in seasons 1 and season 2, you can see that it was almost a labor of love. You could see that people really cared about the story. And we lost that in the second half of season 3 and also in a large part in season 4. And you can see that for some, it feels like it's more like a job.
I think it's the writing.
Yeah, they're producing good stuff, but it is not up to the standard that we have come to expect, and it is not serving the story that we all fell in love with.
Yeah.
Before we leave the topic of Kohilodon and his pondering Roger, I want to tell you that the script contains a little exchange that was omitted. And it was quite good because Kohilodon offers Roger a wampum bracelet, and what Roger refuses. And he says to Joyeo, I offer him peace, and he offers war. So his refusal of the bracelet.
Because Roger is an ass.
Why would he refuse it? That's dumb.
Let me explain. He thought he was being polite by saying, no, thank you. And Kohilodon took that as an act of war. And so remember when Joyeo puts her hand to Coley Haydon's head.
Mhm.
Well, that following statement now makes sense because she says that peace is in the mind of men, but so is war. That's because that part was taken out. And I thought when that happened, I thought that seems just kind of out there in the blue. That she would say that to him, but that's where it came from.
Okay.
And it's too bad
Yeah.
that was removed because it did show that to me that Roger to Coley Laydon was more than just a possession. He was curious about him and what happened in his life that caused people to sell him.
Well,
You know,
they
I
gave
did-
him the opportunity to join the tribe.
And they were disappointed, like the guy with the chubby cheeks.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell he was like, "Oh man, come on."
Yeah.
That's
I was just, like I said, I just felt
Really?
redeemed because I was
Because you were right.
when I said no, but I did say I thought it was a gauntlet for him to join the tribe, and I was told, oh, that's ridiculous. Just like I was told it was ridiculous that Colahedon and Joheo, yes, that he was in love with her, and for some reason there's a large contingency of people who think that it was brotherly.
What?
No.
Exactly.
Oh,
And
come
I
on.
felt that was their inability to see him as a love interest.
No.
Which-
Well, is this a blind person or what?
I mean, I just thought it was, it's like, yes, he clearly was in love with her, and it wasn't a brotherly love. It was
No.
she might have loved him like a brother, but he definitely didn't love her like a sister.
Well, I did notice that when I watched it again for this, when she says that to him, and then she walks off, he realizes something and he looks after her.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes sense, Carmen, with the scene that you're talking about.
It's too bad it wasn't, that wasn't kept.
That's what he's putting together.
Yeah.
Let's move on so we don't run out of time. Was there anything that hasn't been mentioned yet that didn't work for you in this episode?
I'm gonna sit this one out.
I have one.
Carmen, go ahead.
I want to know how Roger and the priest could dig all night long and only get a hole under the south end of this hut big enough for a cat to climb through, but in the next 15 minutes Roger manages to finish excavating it and wiggles out and runs off. I thought that was a little weird.
I love what you notice. I love it. Okay, yeah, anything else?
Yeah, in the jailhouse, Fergus apparently recognizes Bree, and if he met her, we didn't see it. He seemed to know who she was, and that it was important that she go with Lord John and not with Murtaugh back to Jocasta's house. But I don't remember.
Well, then again, I often wondered why he didn't know who she was, since they met in Wilmington, where Fergus and Marsley lived. It didn't make sense that they wouldn't have come in contact right after she found Jamie and Claire.
It was filmed and they cut it.
Yeah.
Kind of odd. The other thing was for the first time ever, the Wilmington streets were dry.
Yeah.
They've been a mud pot every episode. This one they're dry. Let's see, and then the last one, and then I'll shut up. So
Say it. Speak as much as you want, please.
Okay. So remember Roger, when he's escaping, he's running south, right? The river's on his right. He's running south. Now listen, this is the type of business.
Wait. Did you guys know Catherine and Antoinette?
Well, he's south or North Carolina. It's south. It's got to be south of the province of New York. So he's running south. He hears the screams. He runs north. The next thing you see is the father, as though Roger is looking from the north. But then it shows his face and he's looking almost straight ahead, a little to the south. And then it shows him running around from the south to pick up the whiskey barrel and slam it onto the fire. I thought that was really interesting because this sort of thing happened in episode 1 at Cocknammon Rock.
Oh,
They're
really?
riding downstream. Jamie shoves Claire off the horse. She runs upstream. Then before he finds her, she's running downstream. He comes from downstream and he says that Dougal and the other men are waiting upstream for them, and then they turn around and run right downstream.
I'm
The
confused at
things
this
you
point.
noticed.
Yeah.
The only thing I noticed was when, well, and then I watched it again and I saw it when Roger was putting firewood and he interrupted Cahelidon. I think I said his name correctly. And then he reacted, and then the next line was that he doesn't understand pointing is bad, and that interrupting is a problem. And I thought, well, he didn't point. But then when I watched it again, I realized he pointed at the chief early, the scene before.
Yes.
And even that pointing didn't make sense either. It's like, why would you point at someone? It's like, do you want? It's like, do you want some wood in your fire? Yeah. I think that Roger's smart enough to understand who are the people who are in charge and to act accordingly. And he just seemed a little bit too casual for someone who was intelligent. And I don't think that he was as irreverent and enough to disregard that. But
Yeah.
yeah.
For me, the Burger King hat was there again.
Yeah.
Antoinette, you missed that one. It's the chief, that hat, that red feathery hat he wears. I'm like, there's no way Terry did that. That's how I feel. Because
Maybe it was real. Maybe that was a traditional, authentic. Because she really sticks to authenticism.
She does, but maybe the other person did that. Because didn't this guy show up later in the season? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess.
What I found was a little weird. I've been noticing this whole arc that they're going along with Tryon and how he's corrupt and how they're developing this whole regulator angle. They're making him out to be a sort of cartoon villain in terms of he's the corrupt this and that, and we're going to, and I'm wondering, why?
Historically, he was.
I just think that whole thing is a bit clunky in terms of how they have decided to go with that story. I understand that they needed to do something to put Murta in if they were going to keep him alive, but I just felt that whole characterization of Tryon just stripped away so many layers from the character and sort of made him into some kind of cardboard cutout villain. Which I think doesn't serve, which I think is a disservice to a character that I found pretty interesting in the books.
But one of the things that I found very interesting, the ease in which Lauren Jordan Gray sort of sides with Bree and Jamie over the British. And I guess a combination, I guess Love will do that. But also, I think that his being gay, his loyalty to the British Army, knowing that they are sort of the source of his pride, but also his angst that he has to hide, might be a reason for that. But I was trying to figure out his motivation for protecting Murtaugh, and I think it must have been for Jamie. I can't imagine any other reason.
Yeah,
there's no other reason.
For sure. I had a couple other things that didn't work for me. And I thought in the Idiot Hut, there's like a guard sitting right outside the door. And would he not hear them digging all night long? What's that? I mean,
the other was that the door, it's like, I guess, well, later they did show that they had something across the door.
Yeah, it was barred. I'm sorry.
So then, my thing is, I feel like they've castrated Fergus.
Oh, yeah.
And then
they cut off his hand and his
and his testicles.
And we didn't realize he had his balls in his hands. But when Marcelly's when they're in the wagon, she's like, go on then. Like she tells him when to go to join the group. And I'm like, why do they always have to have the woman telling the guy what to do? It drives me crazy.
It's a theme.
She wasn't talking to the men.
She was talking to Fergus.
No, she was talking to the mules. You think she was talking to
she's like,
no, not when she takes off. When he jumps down and joins them and does that Wild West thing. You know?
It's a Stars thing. If you see Stars promo, it's a Stars thing with this whole strong women theme. It's running throughout all of Stars programming. When they're advertising, when they're doing any promo, it's that women this and strong women and it's a Stars thing. It's a platform
I'm tired.
It's that in and of itself isn't the problem. You can have strong women, but you don't have to emasculate the men in the process.
Yeah, well, and have a more evolved strong woman. Don't have these, don't make them cavemen. I feel like the women are just douchebag guys who are women. And then I felt like Carmen with this one. So I'm going to say it like Carmen. So when Marcelly is driving the getaway wagon, Jermaine's basket is there. Is Jermaine in the basket?
And how did she get a wagon and fill it so quickly with a baby?
Oh, God.
Because I was like, that baby's going to fall off when they really start going. And then, wait, I think that might have been all my stuff.
I had one more. Okay, did you notice how the jail exploded?
Boom.
These things. Okay.
Did it explode to the north instead of the south?
Fergus puts the gunpowder on the exterior of the jail, right?
But it blows out from the inside.
Inside. From the inside, the roof goes up.
But maybe they put something else on the inside.
Oh, God.
No, there's no way. It would have blown inward and crumbled it. There's no way. I mean, if you look at any demolition of anything, you would have, no, that didn't make sense.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's go on to the medical stuff because we got to talk about that nasty ear. When Roger is cleaning his ear with that nasty rag, is that better than not cleaning it? Anyway, okay, so that's my question, but let's talk about the ear. Carmen's favorite part.
I've written a lesson on it. They cut off the pinna. That would be your ear flap. And so what was left was a little mound, I thought the special effects were very good. You could see into the external auditory meatus, which is your ear canal. And they just lopped off, which is the way Diana describes it in the book, the whole ear flap and then a little bit of his scalp. As far as the cleansing is concerned, I think Roger, he's not a medical person, so he's probably doing the best that he thinks he would. But honestly, letting it bleed without it, and bleeding to death, you wouldn't want that. Is probably the best way to clean such a wound, is allowing the blood to flow. And I thought the special effects were very good on that.
Catherine?
I mean, my whole time I was watching it thinking he doesn't really need it anyway. I mean, really,
the cleaning?
That area of the ear. I mean, all it does is sort of concentrate the sound to go through into the ear. So when you cut it off, it does not affect hearing in any way, really. I thought that, which I've never quite understood why people collect ears, but in war, that's often very common. But I just thought, okay, it's inconsequential. Other than it bleeds a lot. That area of the body tends to bleed quite a bit when it's cut, the scalp area. What the medical part I thought a lot about was the burning and what that would feel like. The 1st degree, 2nd degree, 3rd degree burns that would have occurred, and where they would have occurred. On the bottom of his feet would have had, 4th degree at that point. And as he got, the pain would have been farther up because once the nerve endings are gone, there's not a lot of pain, but the heat would have caused him. And then I couldn't understand how his skin would burn, but then his cloth wouldn't. And of course the clavicle fracture on Roger. Oh, the other thing I really thought was very interesting, how no one ever loses weight when they're in this show. I mean, it's like you're a captive. I'm sure you're not being fed that well. But anyway.
There's a couple of comments I would like to make, and that is that there's a recent study that shows that our own pinna or auricle of the ear actually does modulate the sound waves into the
it does
into the areas, the range of conversation, which is pretty interesting. Now, would you still be able to hear okay? Yes.
Oh yeah.
It's not that effective. We don't rotate our ears.
It's like it's a mini megaphone.
It
just kind of brings in the sound. It concentrates the sound into the ear canal.
And then if you remember when we were discussing 213, we're pondering whether this was a dislocation of the shoulder or a clavicle break, and we decided that the clavicle was more likely. The script says that is what they intended, was a fracture of the clavicle. And he apparently fashioned his own deer skin hide sling to hold his arm against the body, which he did correctly. So I thought that was interesting.
I thought the ear being chopped off looked really painful. I don't know if it would be.
I'm sure it would be. Yeah.
And I thought the fire looked equally horrible.
Yes.
But I have to say that once Roger threw the whiskey on it, it would not, and I'm pretty sure that was whiskey. If you notice at the very beginning of the episode, the Native Americans are drinking from gourd cups out of the barrel, which I assume is whiskey or some kind of libation. But I think that once that Roger threw it on there, I don't think a person would survive moments after that conflagration, because it would just be, it would sear the lungs and you wouldn't be able to breathe. And I just think it would be really quickly that death would ensue after that. So it was merciful on his part. And that's where I think an element of the title Providence came into play, because Roger was the source of that mercy for the father. He couldn't do anything about his lover and what she decided to do, but he did do something for the father. And what could he have done? I thought about myself when Roger turns and goes back, and I thought, what would run through my mind as I was doing that? What would I be able to do to change the course of events, to give this man, stop his suffering? And Roger figured out how to do it. And I thought that part was really brilliant.
One of the things that has come up was this running theme through Outlander of people taking care of children that aren't their own. And I think that this situation created another of that, when the child was left without his parents, and therefore he's going to be absorbed and taken care of by someone else. But you've got Fergus, you've got this baby now.
Claire.
You have Claire. You have, just all these different people throughout the theme. And there is this running theme of what constitutes family and who gets absorbed into that family. One of the things that keeps going, coming up of the stories about Claire, I think that even Diana has said many times that I've read that it's about people's relationships to Jamie. And therefore, I'm actually I look more forward to that than what Claire's going to do. And I'm just hoping that that's what they're going to do next season. But with both of them being producers, my worry is that because of their personalities outside of their characters, that Katrina is going to dominate still.
And Sam will acquiesce.
Yeah.
Not because he's weak, but because he's
a gentleman. Yeah.
And sees Sam.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as hopeful about season 5 as I was about season 4.
Mm-hmm.
Because in how they responded to a lot of the fan criticism, it seems to me, at any rate, that the attitude is that, you know, we can do whatever we like, basically, and we're as long as we're producing good TV and Stars is happy with it, well, you know, the fans can, you know, take it or leave it. I'm really hoping that the creatives in the show are really honest with themselves and take a look at the Roger and Bree interaction and the lack of chemistry between those two.
Yeah.
You know, I think they thought that because the chemistry between Sam and Katrina was just so natural and just so organic, that it was something that could be easily reproduced. Because you have two good-looking people, there'll be some kind of underlying attraction that will eventually spark some kind of chemistry. And I'm really hoping that they take a good look and realize that it's that, at least for me, I don't know about anybody else, but it just doesn't work. It seems forced. It seems.
But in the books, it didn't work. I think the way it was written, it wasn't as natural as Claire and Jamie, and I don't think it was as natural as Marcelly and Fergus. I think there was a problem. Even in the books, it wasn't as
always a push and pull.
Natural.
But they wanted each other. There was that attraction. There was that love. But you don't see that replicated on the screen between these two. And I really hope that they stop trying to parallel Jamie and Claire moments with Roger and Bree. They try to recreate a part of the wedding night with that love scene between Roger and Bree in Wilmington. That was just so icky.
That didn't go over well.
And then, I know when Roger and when they run to each other, you know, sort of mimicking when Jamie and Claire were reunited on that beach. For heaven's sake, let these two find their own way. If they really want people to buy into this love story, they need to find a way for them to have their own unique way of expressing themselves in that physical relationship, or else it's not going to work and it will always look awkward. I don't buy their love story, not even for a second.
I think Carmen said in an earlier discussion that she buys that they love each other when they're apart, but not when they're together.
Yeah.
They don't seem like they're two people that want each other and companionship and everything.
Yeah.
They just don't, you know, even when they ran that distance in 213 and hugged each other, Roger's looking off into the distance. You go back and look at it. He's kind of looking up like, you know, it is. I just don't see them as being attracted to each other. Whereas Sam and Kat, they really do come across as though they find each other quite attractive.
I watch the intimate scenes in Outlander, but I don't feel that the actresses are being exploited. I don't feel embarrassed for them and that kind of thing. But with the Roger and Bree scene, I felt embarrassed for Sophie. It just felt uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean.
Yeah,
I do know what you mean, and I actually thought that they don't.
I think
match
that
at all.
Rick is very, very sexy in his own way. However, it doesn't come through when he plays Roger. It does when he's himself.
Yes.
I got the impression that he didn't bring enough of himself into those scenes. Roger just this little doughboy professor. I mean, that made sense. Rick needs to bring more of himself into the character just to give Roger some sexiness.
Yeah.
Basically. I mean, he just right now you look at Roger, it's like, who would want him? I mean,
Roger's sexy in the books. She describes him as looking like a pirate.
Yeah. But Richard in real life though is
pretty hot in the books.
Who is pretty hot in the books? Roger.
Claire thinks Roger is a
good
guy. Remember, she says he's got a great bum and And Bree says, "Don't say that." You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they made him a little bit too doughy in the series.
In the TV, on the show.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose, we'll just have to wait and see how Roger and Bree's storyline is developed.
Are there any other standouts you guys want to mention?
I want to mention a couple of interesting tidbits.
Yeah.
So you remember when Joe Yayon gives Roger a little bit of green that he tells him to eat it? Do you know what that is?
Mm-mm.
It's a wintergreen herb, and it's indigenous to New York. It's an anti-inflammatory. So that's why she gave it to him. Another one was that the Outlander costuming department outfitted 110 Native Americans in 1 week.
Wow.
I didn't know. And then the third thing that I've read recently is that the tattoos were airbrushed on, and they are authentic Mohawk tattoos.
Well, a couple of the actors have made them permanent.
Oh.
And that's wonderful.
Yeah.
The Lord of the Ring folks did that too.
There's so many things that this show gets right. And the interpersonal, the community, the relationships among the cast and the crew. It seems like the writers are the outliers almost. And I almost feel like they all go in a room and they toss around these ideas and they almost need to get out. Like they need to, I don't know what.
Well, I think there's a lot of things that are confounding this. I think that social media has had a negative effect in this process, in that they see feedback right away, and they're human. So when they see the negative feedback, or even if it's positive or negative, it's going to affect them whether they want it to or not. And I think that is a problem. I don't think that fans should dictate or even direct where the show goes. I think we should leave it in the hands of the creative, people who know what they're doing, who've done it before. It's sort of like in science, they say when you're observing something, just by observing it, you're changing the actual outcome of what you're observing.
Yes.
To me, that's sort of what's happening with Outlander. Is
especially when they're in the middle of producing a season.
Exactly.
And we see costumes and we see like these photos that come from set. And
people react to things not seeing the big picture, and I think that what's happening is negatively affecting.
She's not talking about like what now when we see the episode and we talk about it. She's talking about when it's in production. When it's in production.
When a little tidbit is leaked, or somebody will say, "Oh, they heard this," and then they just
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. I think the best example is, for example, like the big to-do about her ring and having it later introduced. That's fine. I mean, that's okay. But I think that, when you start having, producers of the show having to shut down their social media accounts because of the behavior of fans, that's problematic.
Right. Yeah. I agree. And I do, as an artist, I don't like to, it is like growing a baby. It's like, it feels like giving birth.
It's your child.
Yeah. And it's like, and you guys are all artists. So, it's, you develop this thing and it's, there's a point where it's ready. And if somebody's looking at it before it's ready and then being like, oh, you should actually move that there. And you should, that would be problematic for me.
Oh, yeah. Well, from that perspective, I agree with you. For people who hear that this might be happening in the show, or they might be thinking of doing this and create this whole brouhaha before they actually see anything, and they make a big to-do out of something that turns out to be nothing. I agree with you. I agree with you on that. But by the same token, I think that if you are, these are people who are producing something to be consumed by the public, and they have to have cognizance of the feelings and the concerns of people who are going to be the end consumers of this of the product. They can't just make it in a bubble. I'm sorry.
I agree.
Too late for that.
I agree.
it needs to inform some of the decision making. Not that they're going to radically, change things, but some of the little things that fans talk about that could have been done, or from I should have been done. I don't think that needs to be. They need to discount that.
My thing is this, though. No one else has to have an opinion. You have a living, breathing creator of the source material. There's no reason for anyone else to have input, to be honest. I feel if you really have a problem with something and trying to figure out what to do with it, go to the source.
That's what the problem is for book readers, I think, is that they so often deviate from the source,
exactly,
which was inspiration for the whole series in the first place, and they very often, in fact, I think they purposefully attempt to go and create some kind of a side story, where they can explore their own creativity. And I actually can understand why they might want to do that. But I think sometimes why people withdraw, such as Terry or Matt, is because I think they get exhausted by, there's one person and you're trying to respond to an army of people who are slamming you from every direction. I think it would be exhausting.
If you look at, I don't watch TV, morning TV, that stuff, but I went as a guest with somebody to the Ryan and Kelly show. I was so alarmed that this is what millions of Americans watch.
Yeah.
I mean, I just,
drivel.
It was so unintelligent, uninspiring, simplistic. It was
intellectually lazy.
Yeah,
I can't even use intellectual in a sentence with that. And so then I think, they've got this, Diana's a genius, and they have her brilliant work, and they're trying to adapt this, but they're also trying to attract the throngs, people who watch that crap. And the problem is she has a very large, educated, sophisticated following.
Yeah.
And they're trying to simultaneously cater to that and this other thing, which is why I think we get these dumbed down version of men and women, with these caricature.
People don't want to have to think.
I don't know, but it's kind of like they just need to decide to be intelligent. That's what I think. It's just go there. Just be like, we're different.
I think that the reason the books are so popular, the reason the subject of the books are so popular is because how they're written and how she did it. And I don't really think it's necessary to adapt them. Just streamline them. That's it. That's all it took. That's all it takes.
I agree.
There's no reason to change it.
But I think sometimes, especially, I don't feel this about the original team of writers, but second half season 3, and we got some great new writers in season 4. Shayna and Bronwyn, I thought, did great jobs. Yeah. And that Maisie who directed, she did 412. She rocks. I think sometimes, how do I say this? I think sometimes the life experience and the writing level of the writers on the show, second half season 3 and season 4, is not up to the task.
Well, you think about it, Diana is in her 7th decade of life.
Right.
If you have paid attention, you should have come away with a lot of life lessons. And I get the impression that a lot of these new writers are fairly young. They don't have a lot of experience with life. I don't think, I could be wrong because I don't know them personally, but I'm sure they don't have the kind of experience that Diana has. Whereas you look at Ron and Ira and Tony, they're a little closer to Diana's age. And I do think that her writing, she has told me personally that she feels like she's a better writer now than she was when she first started out.
Yeah.
And, reflection of not only the experience of writing itself, but her experience with life.
One other thing that didn't work for me, like Brianna, Lord John Gray's over there. He's, his kid's somewhere else. He's like there, and she says it's all about me. The whole, she's never like, how are you?
Yeah.
The other thing about this interpretation of Bree is that in the books, Bree is a spirited girl.
Yeah.
She's intelligent, she's resourceful, she's got a lot of, she's fearless, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that Sophie plays her, I don't see much resemblance between, they're going through the story similarly, but the character of Bree doesn't seem to be there. I miss
She was an engineer. I mean, she was someone who was constantly trying to figure out how to make things so that their lives would be easier.
Exactly. Yeah. To our collective point, I believe that it's this dumbed down. She's a strong, fiery woman because she slapped Jamie in the face.
Yeah. Well, Jamie they've even dumbed him down. I mean, he's just known for being brilliant on so many different levels, and they just don't show it. No. And then you've got, they might mention it here and there, but she takes, in the books, it seems like she's supposed to take after him far more. And so I don't see why they've lost all that. Some of it might be simply because there's this anti-feminism. There's this, it's weird. We have this one element where women, I am woman, hear me roar, but don't call me a feminist. And that's that strange dichotomy that I don't quite understand. And it seems that they're trying to walk that line.
I don't think so. I think they're just having them be like cavemen. And then they're having the men like, okay, well, let's tamp you down and not make you a hero because you'll make the woman look weak. And we can't have that.
They're emasculated.
Which is so stupid. And you see, that is what burns my butt. Because they continue to underestimate the intelligence of the people who watch the show.
Right.
We are capable of understanding and appreciating nuanced, complex characters. We don't need for you to show us your characterized version of what a strong woman is and how she interacts with the men in her life. That is so much gaga.
Yeah, that's the thing that's... Anyway.
Yeah, anyway. Rant over.
I thought Sarah Lee, is that her name, Sarah Lee? Do you think they named her after the cake?
Sarah Lee? Where did that come
from? The one who plays
Joe Yehan.
Joe Yehan. Yeah.
Is Sarah Lee and
who mentioned cake? Now I'm gonna have to eat some cake.
I think she was fabulous.
And she's extremely interactive. She's another person who's very interactive.
Yeah. Oh, so beautiful.
So good. And she also said that a Mohawk mother would never, ever leave her child and do that. Ever.
She did say that she would never hand her child off and walk into a fire. And I think that's probably true.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think any mother would.
She said,
I don't think any mother would walk into a fire for some guy who refused. I would have lost all respect for that.
They do have sati in India where the women will go throw themselves on.
No, that's different. They don't have a choice.
Say that again.
Sati.
Sati.
Yeah. When the husband dies, the woman is burned alive with the husband.
Yes.
But that's different. She's not given a choice
nowadays than it used to be, but
it's outlawed. But the other is that it's more religious than this wasn't religious.
That's where they borrowed that from, because I that in that family oriented situation where the women are so strong and choose who they want to share their lives and so on. That didn't ring true to me. I mean, it was dramatic.
Well, even in Sati though, there's more than one wife, so it's not like it's every single wife. It's just one particular wife.
Yes,
and you're in a big family compound. So even if there are children left behind, there are mothers there to take care of those children.
Well, how do they choose the wife? They draw straws.
It's usually the first wife. The first
okay.
wife.
The oldest one.
And that was in the book, though. She walks into the fire in the book.
Yeah, in the book, but they're just saying that wasn't realistic and culturally.
Yeah. And that baby is beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was one of the most beautiful babies I've ever seen in my life.
And she was so happy with Sarah Lee. And then I felt so bad when Braden was doing his scenes. I was like, I hope they didn't do that too much, because the baby is distressed looking at his face.
At him. But you know what got me more than his tears was the way he was holding the baby's hand.
Yeah.
She reached, when he...
Yeah, and he was holding her like the baby's hand in a way that was so paternal and so loving and gentle. That's what got me more than the...
That was exquisitely done. It was really beautiful. I
want to suggest a caution, and that is that I know Sarah Lee said no Mohawk woman would do that, but we don't know 200 years ago what people would do. I couldn't speak for our culture 200 years ago.
No.
And what a woman might do. I mean, I've read things about it, and so I feel like I have some kind of a background knowledge, but trying to predict, what choices a woman would make.
Would have made. Yeah.
It's a little iffy.
Yeah. She could have been pathologically codependent. I mean, we don't know.
Well, and Catherine, it's more likely that a woman would have respected him for that back then than seen him. I think.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. I mean, she may have. Like I said, she could have been pathologically codependent. She could have been, for all we know, I mean, she was probably emotionally abused in certain ways because of the way he is and his mindset. I mean, I don't think I was just very. I don't think it's a stretch that she would have walked into the fire at all. I think that would have been probably even more realistic. She would have walked into the fire with her child.
Yeah,
but
she converted Christian too, and that would have influenced her. But I thought it's on the other hand, it's also interesting because I think what she's saying is that in today's pop culture, a woman wouldn't do.
And I think that was one of those things where anytime you have a character that represents who you are, or you think that it represents who you are, you're very sensitive to how that person is portrayed. And so you look at them more personally. So you think, how could a mother, leave her child like that? Yeah. It's not a reflection on who you are as a culture. It's not a reflection on who you are as a person, but it's very difficult not to respond to that.
Yeah.
And so I can understand why she would have felt the need to say it, even though there's no way for us to have known.
Didn't you think it was enormously effective that what she was saying to him as he was burning, what we couldn't hear? So all we could see was her lips moving as she's murmuring, her dismay or her sorrow, her love, all of the emotions that you could think must be going through her. I just thought that was effectively done, far more than if we had heard
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the acting of, Richard's face when he sees what she does is, just so powerful.
Yeah.
A lot.
Also, his eyes were just like saucers.
Yeah, and with the Cahaleton character, also, just everything going on there.
It was
really great.
Well, is there anything they did get right? Is that in the book they talked about how she put in the fire and cradled his head, and she did do in the fire. They showed that she was cradling his head when she got.
How many takes for that scene for that poor stunt woman? Oh my gosh!
I hope only one.
You're
unbelievable. Yeah. Is there anything else, my lovelies?
This has just been wonderful.
It's now midnight.
We gotta OD. We OD'd. That's it. I mean, we just, we were fiending and we OD'd.
Yes, Carmen, where's your award-winning necklace?
Yes.
It's
I
right.
wanna see it.
I want to see it.
And also, what earrings are you wearing, Carmen? You always wear different ones. I
Okay.
like the ones you're wearing today.
Oh, these are just little ones I've made. They're little sterling silver leaves.
Oh,
Aw.
Very light, and I did yoga today,
Okay.
so
Okay, so Carmen went to a beading retreat, and she won first place for this necklace that she beaded by hand. And it took how many hours, Carmen?
116. Actually, or that a minimum of 116. It's the life. It represents the life cycle of Daphnis nerei, which is a hawk moth. And they lay their eggs on oleander leaves. So the leaves and the flowers, the pink oleander, that's what that represents. And then I don't know if you can see, but on the leaves, there are these little green balls, and those are the eggs. They're just little translucent green eggs. Then you come down to when the eggs hatch, they grow into a tiny little caterpillar that enlarges pretty fast. He looks like this. It has a little golden horn on its tail. And then it goes into the chrysalis stage over here, which is this part right here. And it's kind of a golden brown.
Can you go up a little? We can't see that.
Can you see it now? There.
Yeah.
And then when it hatches, it's a very large moth that is as big as your hand, an adult hand. So it's very large. It lives in Asia, Hawaiian Islands, and I'm forgetting another place that it lives in. But it's a really beautiful piece. It even has little legs. Do you see its? Can you see its legs?
Yes, I see the little legs.
Oh.
And its antenna. And then the strap, you probably can't see it, but it changes colors 5 times from dark brown to the light green to represent a tree branch. That is crocheted, and it has over 2,400 beads that you have to string onto this crochet string before you start crocheting it.
Wow.
So you pick one bead at a time with each stitch, but you have to string it on first. And so I had to figure out how many of each color to put on and then repeat it on the other side so it would be symmetrical. And then most of the pink flowers are French wiring technique. The leaves and the others are peyote, either flat or what's called tubular peyote. The round bodies are done in tubes. And you can make the body come in or expand by reducing the number of your stitches or expanding the number of your stitches. I was delighted that we all vote on all the members vote. And
Carmen, did you vote for yourself?
I did.
Of course.
Of course. Nothing wrong with that.
I always vote for myself.
But the way to do it is you vote for the 4 favorite pieces that you see, and the person who gets the most votes is first, second, third, and honorable mention. So I didn't just vote for myself. I voted for 3 other pieces that I thought were exceptional, because it falls to the whole group to determine, how the ranking goes. So anyway, I was pleased about it, and yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
That is. Carmen, will you stand up one more time?
This is the Portland Bead Society, is the society that went on this retreat, and I've been president of it. At that time, there were 700 members. Now we're down to about 400 members, because beadwork has kind of gone by the wayside for knitting, and paper making and things like that. So I'm hopeful there'll be a renaissance, and we'll be back into into a more popular mode. But there are beads. We have people from all over the world, actually, that belong to our society, and there are societies of beadwork all over the nation. It's, it's not, you don't read about it very much, but it's out there.
That's so cool.
That is.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And then Antoinette, are you going to throw on your wedding outfit for us?
No.
Okay.
Bad.
Maybe next time.
All right. Well, it's been wonderful.
Bye, ladies. I love you all. It's been fun. Take care, and we'll talk again soon.
Walk good. That's how we would say in Jamaica. Walk good.
Okay.
All right. Love you guys.
Bye. This
Bye.
has been wonderful. I always have such a fantastic time with you guys.